All right, Freedomers. All right, so we're gonna discuss a deep topic that I learned from Jordan Peterson. Today I said that. Today I said I have to become a monster, to win, and I saw it on YouTube. This video about the hero must become the monster, and he said some shit that was life changing and filled with confirmation. He said, like he says here, the hero must become the monster. You must learn to be the monster. This is evident. But also, before I even go further of becoming a monster, the monster is almost like a parent and a child. Sometimes a parent can't. Your child won't respect you until they know you can become a monster, and what that means is until they fear you. And what I came to the understanding of becoming a monster is that fear must actually not be something you're scared of anymore. Fear must be something that you're a friend of. Fear is something that you must understand. Fear is something that you must accept. Fear is something almost like you gotta shake its hand and say, we friends now. You must actually become in alliance with fear. We're going to talk about that later in the video, but I've learned an unconscious monster, fear is not their friend. Fear is their enemy. And fear is used inappropriately. We're gonna get into that later in the video, in the live. But fear is something that is when you're unconscious of your monster, fear is something that it's something that you.
How did I know that confirmation wasn't from God?
The fear is something that you don't get to use. You don't get to use. You are distracted. You are angry. It's inappropriate. Like, it's never on time. It's never used at the right time, place, the 5 W's. We're gonna get into that though. Naive is a person who's scared of their power. And before, in the past, a lot of people call me naive. And this is something that I came up with because naive is true. And he even said in the video, you're too powerful to be naive. And on the flip, a person who's really naive is usually scared of their monster. They're usually turning a blind eye to their own inner devil, their own inner monster. Comfort and with this, when you get this, you also when we talk about fear, comfort is the loss of fear, because usually when you're comfortable, you can predict everything. You know what's next. You know what to do. There's nothing you're scared of because you are in you're in a controllable state. It's up to you. And I'm learning the universe has been trying to make me uncomfortable, or in definition, how I say it is the emotional state that is driven by fear. Now, there's 2 ways to think about this. Like I said earlier, fear can be your friend, or fear can, like when I say driven by fear, meaning like you have a certain level of slight paranoia on the fact that you could lose. But when you're comfortable, there is no losing, quote unquote, air quote. There is no losing because you're in control, quote unquote. Until there's a circumstance that rips that comfort from under you. The unconscious monster, like I said earlier, is inappropriate. Doesn't know the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why when it comes to their inner monster. They don't have tact. meaning they don't have aim and fire appropriately. They're always hitting the wrong target, or the wrong part. And that is, I've learned, as an Aries cusp, that's very inappropriate, because like if you don't have tact, you waste a lot of energy. They don't have skill, meaning basically, when you don't have tact, usually you don't have skill, you don't have nothing that you're crafting, you don't have nothing that you're becoming better at, something that's crafted by your own hands. They're very unbalanced, and they're facade filled. It's not like you're consciously two different parts of your personality where it expands into different things, but you're facade filled, like everything, like it's basically, you wear a mask until pressure really shows the shadow that you've been hiding. The past defines him or her, constantly distracted, and I'm overcoming this myself, and afraid of their own power. Non-adaptable, and won't change at all. If you, and he also said, if in the beginning of the video, if you're not a monster, you're not virtuous. If you're a monster, but don't act like a monster, that is virtuous. Not being a monster makes you harmless. And harmless, nobody, you, like I've like a parent, like I said, a parent to a child. If your child knows that you're harmless, you'll never gain their respect. You'll never gain their, I would even say love, because they feel you're harmless all of the time. But if you can bring them harm, it's a balance. You have to learn how to be harmed, how to bring them harm and be harmless. A controlled, like a good example of this is a controlled Hulk. Like if you watch the X-Men, at first it was very, like I've watched it over the years, Hulk was very uncontrollable, even though it was given to him, that Hulk-like nature, like it is given to all of us. It is at first it was uncontrollable. Then he had somebody outside of him that triggered his Hulkness, or triggered it down when he became a Hulk, or he couldn't control it anymore. But that would be somebody who is unconscious, somebody who can't bring himself back down to earth, someone who can't see themselves coming back down to their human form, is somebody who's uncontrollable. So the problem with being an unconscious Hulk is that you bring more damage than necessary. You'll wake up when you become a Hulk again. You'll watch your results, and you'll realize, oh shit, look what I've done. Instead of saying instead of coming back down from your Hulkness and from your Hulk-like monster nature and saying, I know what I done. It was purposeful. It was conscious. And that's, but a controlled Hulk, knows when to be monstrous, the 5 W's. Has purpose and reason. And it's most times controlled, because we're all human. So your Hulk-like nature cannot be controlled all of the time. That is foolish. It is foolish to believe that your Hulk-like nature, or your monster per se, can be controlled all of the time. That is completely foolish. But most times it is purposeful. I didn't say it was under control all the time, but it is purposeful. Past doesn't define him or her. They're razor focused. They embrace their power, and they're willing to change and be adaptable. And he also said, until you become a monster, you won't even, no, I'll say this. Until you become a monster, a control monster, you won't ever step into your personal power. Become a monster and learn. Is that say learns? Becoming a monster earns No, yeah, become a monster and learn to be assertive and say no. Because when you don't become a monster, what he said in the video in so many words was, you don't know how to say no, you don't know how to stick up for yourself, you don't know how to negotiate, and you'll develop self-hate because you don't know how to stand for what's true and right, even in the face of destruction. So he said not liking conflict is not means that you're too agreeable. And I've learned this through personal behavior, is that being too agreeable is weakness. That means you're afraid of your own monster, you're afraid of your own demons, because again, when you don't know how to be assertive or be a monster, it's easy to, like I heard somebody say the other day, it's hard for me to say no. When you can't say no, you develop self-hate because you're always violating yourself. So in business, you will always end up being violated because you don't know how to wake up the monster and say no and fight for your own life by any means necessary. Like he said, you're too powerful to be naive. If you're going to play with fire, you better be a master of fire. And what that really means, when you wake up the monster, when you become at least conscious of it, don't play with it like you're trying to just wake it up to be cool. Wake it up to master it, because if you don't master it, it will master you. And that's when you become unconscious. You'll walk from your wounds. You'll walk from your emotions will control you, and that's a problem. So in business, you won't be able to negotiate on the table. You won't know your values. When you don't know what's right, you won't study, you won't read, because your emotions rule you instead of you becoming the master of fire. Whatever that fire may be, whether it be your business, whether it be online marketing, whatever your business is. With a controlled monster, tragedy becomes triumph, and it's always transforming. Under a controlled monster learns to put himself under construction, and even critical thinking, because a conscious monster wants to become somebody worthwhile because it's purposeful. An uncontrolled monster, tragedy is just tragedy. It's always repeating the past, and it's a level of stagnancy. With a controlled monster, fear is your friend and an ally, not always to be trusted, because sometimes fear talks a language that can put you in danger. But fear is your ally nonetheless, because you have to see it like you're going in the woods in the dark, and fear guides you to leaving the woods or surviving the woods or being under control in the woods, learning where the food is in the woods, because you are under control. Unconscious monster, fear is your enemy, meaning you'll find the quickest way to run out of the situation. You'll find the quickest way not to handle your situation. You'll find the quickest way to not do what you're supposed to do. You'll fold under fire, and you're always going against it. Like, in other words, like when you're a controlled monster, I've learned, you can sit with your fear and have a conversation. And from the outside that's so deep. From the outside looking in, it looks like you're in a line. It looks like y'all in cahoots, but you realize there's no running. You realize, like I learned the other day, you have to have a mutual understanding. You don't have to love each other. You don't have to be best friends. You don't have to like each other. You can just say hello and be in a livable situation. But when you're running from your fears, when you're living from your fears, you always running. You always think there's a level of control because there's a person who's running and there's a person who's not running. Or no, there's a person who's running, there's a person who's chasing. Let's put it like that. But when you're in fear, when you're a control monster, you almost know that if necessary, if y'all have the same goal or y'all have the same problem, y'all will conquer it together until the enemy is defeated. If necessary. But that fear will at least direct you in the right direction to conquer your own issues. But again, when that fear tells you what to do, you don't get angry. I'll put it like this. If that's so fucking deep. If your fear is telling you the truth, you don't necessarily get upset at the information. You get what I mean? Like when you have an unconscious monster, even if your fear is telling you the truth, you'll dismiss it. You'll blame it. You'll feel like they're getting a alliance and they're working against me and blah blah blah. Instead of saying, yo, we have a common enemy, a common goal, a common problem, we have a common ground. When you're unconscious, there is no common ground. It's one way or the other, and you realize that you can't have that when you're controlled. When you're controlled, you have to meet a common ground with your fear. You can't tell it what to do to some extent, because fear can be so powerful that it can force you to do things that is very unreasonable and not wise. Because sometimes your fear is really just telling you the truth of the situation. Sometimes your fear is not really telling you a lie. Real talk. Like, I've learned some of my fears were telling me the truth about the situation. My fears weren't telling me a lie. So a control monster, fears guide them, like I said earlier, to do more. It is a constant indicator to do more. It's not something that is like, it's not something, again, like I said earlier, it's not something you necessarily run away from, because like I was saying earlier to myself, like a couple months ago, like every time I fear, or I'm not listening to my fears to move forward, to dominate, to grow, to become, to do whatever it takes, I'm losing ground. So your fear can be like, yo, you're losing ground. Okay, that's a great example. You're losing ground, right? And what that means is, when you're unconscious, losing ground means that you need to try to control everything. And you're gonna misinterpret, mishandle, mistreat, violate any laws to control your piece of the board. But when you're a controlled monster, you'll learn the purpose of what you must overcome and what you gotta get. It has nothing is like you're trying to conquer just to conquer, even though that can be true to some extent. But there's a goal behind it. You want something. There's a desire you must fulfill. And when you have a control monster, it's like you have a godlike expansion that you desire, and you won't stop till you get what you want, till you get that godlike desire. When you're unconscious, it's all about your ego. It's all about me. Nothing else. So in business and in life, the hero or you must become a monster to succeed. Because if you don't learn to become feared, you won't become powerful. And even Machiavelli says, what would you rather be feared than loved? Yeah, you can say it's both, but loved can be so. Love can be so misinterpreted and subjective. But fear, the reason why fear is so powerful is because everybody has similar human fears. Same thing with love to some extent. But because love can be so subjectified, love can be trusted. Ooh, shit, god damn it. Love cannot be trusted. But fear, it's not that it can't be trusted, it's more reliable. I don't think love is more reliable than fear. I think love is a very high frequency, but for humans, most humans, fear is more reliable. And of course, like I said earlier, fear must be controlled too. Because fear can become unreliable because the brain is in survival mode. So too much fear will only have you in survival. So that's why you got to balance both. But too much love can have you have standards that's unreasonable. That's not of your human experience. Which for some is good and for some is bad. But in business, you must learn to become a monster.